Well, welcome everybody to another one of the Bitesize series that we are doing in conjunction with DGB Solicitors. Delighted to have Steve and Debbie with us again. This one is around cash flow, and hopefully everybody gets something from it. You know, these are, I put on a post on social media yesterday. These are really good nuggets of information, bite-sized chunks that hopefully individuals can take something from, and then, you know, further down the line maybe pick up again with Debbie and Steve if further detail is required. I think everybody knows me. I'm Andrew from Professional Liverpool. We've got Laura and Leah also with us today, who are supporting us. That they're just sort of, I suppose, learning the ropes in the early stages, but I think it's important for them to be part of these conversations going forward. So without further ado, I will hand over to Debbie and Steve. Which one of the two of you is going first today?
I'm going to kick off if that's okay. So I'll start off. First of all, can you all hear me okay? Is that okay? Excellent. So welcome to the third in our Bite-Size Legal Insight talks, short, sharp insights into particular topics. And today we're looking at how to improve cash flow and avoid bad debts in your professional services firm. A couple of housekeeping points. If the platform goes down, just come out and back in again. It would be great if you kept your cameras on because it's deliberately a small and interactive session. We're going to speak to about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we're happy to answer any questions. It probably is useful if you mute during the presentation just to help with sound quality. And as you know, the session's being recorded. So just starting off with a bit of context of what we do. We draft key commercial documents, provide discrete and ongoing commercial advice, and advise directors and shareholders on their duties and responsibilities. And we also, when they get into trouble, resolve disputes. What is our involvement with cash flow and debt management? Well, we're a legal practice. So first of all, we have to control our own costs and cash flow. Secondly, we do some debt recovery work for clients. So we provide those services professionally. And we do business risk management work with clients where we look at their systems and processes, because we'd always rather look at prevention rather than cure. At the end of the presentation, there will be an opportunity to chat. And let's talk about what our objectives are for today. Well, by the end of this session, you'll have an understanding of where to start with a debt management protocol, the key points to address in your terms of business and processes, and what to do when you don't get paid. Creating a system that facilitates good cash flow starts well before you act on any client's instructions. And this is a great point to hand over to Steve, who's going to look at the preliminaries for us.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. Hopefully you can all hear me now. Yeah, okay. Well, I suppose let's kick off. As certainly Amanda will appreciate, there's lots of different types of cash flow and definitions, but let's stick with a very simple and comprehensible one that I think we all understand, is that cash flow is about the process of cash moving into and out of a business at a specific point in time. It's either going to be positive or negative. Hopefully in all of our cases, positive. It's useful to put this into context and to appreciate the importance of cash flow. Let's start with a quote from a well-known CEO. And he says, "Never take your eyes off cash flow because it's the lifeblood of the business." So that's from Richard Branson, just emphasizing the point. Why else is it important? Well, the Federation of Small Businesses and their research tells them that about 7 out of 10 small businesses cite cash flow problems as the biggest threat to their company. And when you appreciate that small businesses are at the heart of our communities, employing in the region of sort of 60% of the workforce, it's pretty startling that around 50,000 firms close each year, citing cash flow problems as the cause. And I suppose to reinforce the point, there was some research recently carried out by the BACS payment schemes, which actually showed that the late payment problems is causing more than a third of small businesses to have difficulties with cash flow. So that gives us some context as to the importance of good cash flow within a business. Well, what's going to help us with the cash flow? Well, from our experience, it really starts very early in the process. And I'd just like to extract a couple of key considerations which we have to have in mind at the start of that process. And the first would be to determine your level of risk with regard to non-payment. And what I mean by that, if you have no risk at all, or if you're not prepared to take any risk at all with regard to not getting paid, then the obvious solution is to secure payment in full in advance. You've got your money, you're then going to be doing the work. Equally, at the other extreme, I suppose it would be if you're happy to accept your client and to do the work, you've got no major concern about getting paid at the end, well, you might be prepared to complete all of the work and at that point invoice and hopefully get paid for the work. So you've got those two extremes. And again, that's a determination for you, but it's a crucial one that has to be taken. The next important factor, I would say, is asking yourself the question, do you actually want to accept the instructions in the first place? Are we dealing with an existing client or a new client? Even if it's an existing client, have you experienced some problems before with poor payment? Perhaps that client is difficult to secure instructions from. Perhaps you've had problems in terms of communication with a former client. And that in itself can cause problems because, of course, if you're not getting clear, timely instructions, your work in progress is then locked up. You're not realizing that work in progress. So again, that will have an impact in terms of tying up cash, which needs to be really coming into the business. So that's considerations with an existing client. With a new client altogether, we have to be recommending a proper assessment at that early stage of the financial position of the client, trying to find out as much as possible some degree of profiling of the new client. That might involve, for example, checks on company's house, general searches on the internet. You might find that in actual fact, this new client is a party to the government initiative, the Prompt Payment Code, which can give you some reassurance that they are going to be paying their invoices promptly in accordance with that code. There's some details on the slides that we'll provide, and we'll give you that link to the Department for Business Prompt Payment Code system. And actually, when I thought about this, it works both ways, because not only could you be looking at that for your clients, but also it's something that businesses can subscribe to. So if you are using suppliers and paying them for their services, your own subscription to the Prompt Payment Code can help your reputation as well. The other thing I'd mention at this stage is that basic step that has to be taken to assess who you're actually contracting with. Is it an individual? Is it a company? Asking yourself the question, who within the company are you actually securing your instructions from? Are they properly authorized? And are you carrying out the proper ID checks at that time? It might be that you're dealing with an unincorporated association, for example, a club. Again, absolutely fundamental to your assessment is asking, is the person you're dealing with authorized to carry out those instructions on behalf of the club? So to emphasize the point, these are matters which are taken at the absolute outset, before a file is opened, before you start acting on the case. So it's about having proper initial procedures, proper checks at the outset, because all of these have an absolutely direct effect upon the business's cash flow. So having decided to accept the instructions, we're then on to having the correct paperwork in place. And this is probably a good time to pass back to Debbie to deal with that point.
Thanks very much for that, Steve. Just before we go off Steve's point, I will share with you that pretty much the only bad debt we've ever had in 17 years of being in business was from a club where there was a lack of clarity about who on the committee was able to give us instructions. So it can be a really practical problem. So anyway, we now know who we're contracting with. We've evaluated the risk in getting paid, and we're happy with that. And in most cases, as professionals, we're probably going to be either interim billing or getting paid at the end. We know the basis upon which we want to contract. So the next step is to get a contract in place with the client, ideally using terms of business and a letter of engagement. So the letter of engagement, well, this is a specific letter, and it usually covers the services that you've agreed to provide in some detail and the mechanism for charging. So, for example, those points on whether you've agreed a payment on account. It will include the basis upon which you're charging. And in professional services, there's quite a lot of ways in which we charge. We might charge by time. We might charge percentages on transactional services. We might be doing work on a fixed fee. And some professionals do a mix of services with a variety of fees related to the outcomes that they achieve for clients. So it's really important to get those points down in your letter of engagement, because your terms of business are a general document and they won't contain that detail. Your terms of business, well, these are broad and generic, and we're only going to focus today on points that are relevant to cash flow. Things to think about: the ability to add VAT where applicable, the approach to disbursements that you incur for clients, and then very critically, the timing of invoices. You might want to retain the right to interim bill, and then things that are thought about traditionally with regard to cash flow: timing of payment. So you may want to put 14 days within delivery of your invoice, or you may want to put some people put immediately upon delivery of an invoice, because they're thinking about the interest at the point from which interest runs if there's a delay in payment. I think a really important feature that people don't always think about in terms of business is imposing a clear time limit in the terms of business for any queries relating to your invoice. Because what you don't want to do is send your invoice out, allow your 14 days, 21 days, 28 days, whatever it is, to elapse, then start chasing for payment and get a query on the invoice that delays payment. So that's a really good one to have in there. Interest and administration fees for late payment. And again, the next one is particularly important: the right to stop work or terminate the contract if your invoices aren't paid. It's something none of us want to do as professionals. We all want to do the job well and get paid at the end. But getting paid is absolutely crucial. And if you cannot get instructions, you've interim billed and you're not getting paid, definitely those are red flag points. And having the right to stop work in certain circumstances will enable you to bring the contract to an end. The retention by you of any intellectual property rights could be very important. It really depends upon the services that you're supplying. But if you're doing something, for example, that's creative, and you've delivered the product or service to your client, they're using the product and service, you might see it all over Facebook, and you haven't been paid and you don't get paid, that is really galling. So you want the retention of any intellectual property rights where relevant. That really covers the terms of business. We're now into process. So you've got your contract in place. The first thing to do is to be regularly reviewing your work in progress. If you're working on a time charge basis, you need to look at that and check where you are as against estimates or quotes that you've given, and ensure that you give the client regular updates. That really, it might be a regulatory requirement, but it's very much about customer satisfaction. And you want high levels of customer satisfaction because you want the client to have you as a priority to pay. Regular billing is important for obvious reasons, so that you get that money coming in and sustaining you. Diary notes to monitor timely payments. So when you're sending your invoices out, do you record the point at which the client is due to pay somewhere? So that if your policy is 21 days, at 21 days, you take a look and you check whether you've been paid. If you get to the 21-day point and you haven't been paid, immediate follow-up is very important. I know with some of us in professional services, that's a bit of an uncomfortable process, but it is extremely important. Obviously, there's a variety of ways of approach, not suggesting it's heavy-handed, but I think that gentle reminder to start off with is very important. And in terms of process, then have a period in mind where you will take action if you're not paid. I think as lawyers, we would say to you that the longer something is left to run, the more potentially difficult it is to make a recovery. And I'll now pass back to Steve to just take a look at what to do when you don't get paid.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. Yeah, I mean, as Debbie's just touched upon, I mean, it's absolutely crucial to have those systems in place for timely follow-up of any slow payers with regard to those invoices that have been rendered. And I suppose the crucial point about that is, you know, that's probably the best time to be chasing. They've got fresh in their mind exactly what a great job you've done for them, and it's good to remind them of that good job that you've done and the fact that you want to get paid for it. I mean, the evidence it certainly suggests that those who are followed up quickly and directly are more often than likely to actually pay. The other thing that you might be thinking about at that early stage is perhaps the need for some negotiation. I mean, it's not unheard of for your clients themselves to have perhaps some short-term cash flow problems. And it might be that at that particular point, you recognize the difficulty. You might be prepared to accept, for example, a 50% down payment. The money's better in your account than not, and enter into some form of sensible and realistic arrangement for the balance. And again, that's not an ideal scenario, but at least what it's doing is addressing that immediate problem head on. It's securing perhaps a very substantial part of your invoice. The other thing that I'd be thinking about at this point would be the tactical considerations to trying to collect the money. You know, have you identified the correct individual, the designated person that you need to be speaking to about the payment of the invoice? I'd also be thinking about, is this a situation of we won't pay or we can't pay? It might be that you need to be tactically contacting other people within the organization, for example, writing to co-directors who perhaps know nothing about this debt owed to you, but who may well be able to bring some pressure to bear to resolve the position sooner rather than later. It might be that the company that you're dealing with has actually got a non-executive director on the board. And a letter copy to the non-executive director may well just bring about some much needed action in terms of payment. It might be that you have to also mention, for example, the Late Payment of Commercial Debts Act 1988, which provides for interest on your invoice, and also the payment of administration charges. And again, the mention of the Act and the fact that this is going to cost them more money longer term, again, may well just have the desired effect. I think at this point, it strikes me that we've almost come full circle to some of the things I talked about on the file opening procedure, because it's about knowing your client. It's about knowing who the right person to contact is. Are they, for example, members of the prompt payment code? Well, you will know this from those initial inquiries that you made at the file opening procedure. And I suppose that's summed up with, you know, the due diligence that you will be taking at the outset of the case, which may well inform and help you in your cash collection at the end of the case. We do understand, though, that of course, having made all of those attempts to collect the invoice and the payment, it still hasn't been forthcoming, and some further pressure needs to be applied. What you can do is send a formal court document known as a pre-action protocol letter, which gives the debtor a finite period of time in which to pay the debt, and threatens further action afterwards. In fact, we as a firm can offer you and help you with a free template letter, which can be used. And if you're interested in speaking to us about that by all means get in touch with us afterwards. So having sent the formal pre-action letter demanding payment, what happens if there's no response whatsoever? It's still being ignored. Well, all is not lost, because at that point, it might be necessary to issue court proceedings. Again, something we can help you with. Subject to the value of the debt, the court office now run a very good and efficient and effective online claims procedure for debts up to the figure of £10,000. That's designed specifically to keep lawyers out of the equation, and for the matter to be resolved without expensive legal costs and a lengthy process. So it's designed to be a streamlined process. It doesn't always work that way, I have to say, but that's the objective. If you're dealing with debts over £10,000, then I think I'd have to say, you know, get some specialist legal advice that will enable you to get input as to the best prospects of securing payment of your debt, even if you get a court judgment against your debtor. And you can get some advice with regard to the options available for enforcing the judgment, the court judgment that hopefully you get. And I suppose the final point on this, if we've got to that stage, then I'm afraid we're probably in a position where the relationship is broken down, probably irretrievably forever. I suppose fundamentally you will not be working for them again. But I suppose the point I'd say about that is have systems in place to record that fact, to record the difficulties that you've experienced. Again, that will inform you for the next time, and also on any new cases that might arise. We all learn lessons. So at that point, I'll just pass back to Debbie to do something of a summary of some of our points today.
Thanks, Steve. So in summary, know who you are doing business with. We found that out to our own cost about 10 years ago. Have a strategy, re your fees depending on the client's risk profile. Ensure you have good quality terms of business in place that have been properly communicated to the client before work starts. Invoice promptly, monitor time limits for payment, and follow up late payment immediately. And when you encounter resistance, get timely legal input. Those are our top tips.